Hi, Merle Goldstein here. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about attachment. It's something I've discussed in the past and a topic that many people are interested in. But there are certain nuances about attachment theory and certain developments that have come after the initial attachment theory research that can be important in terms of our relationships. So, just to summarize, attachment theory states that when human beings, or any mammal actually, is feeling distressed, our natural instinct is to seek proximity or closeness with a caregiver, a parent figure, someone that we associate with being able to protect us or comfort us that can help us feel better or remove the sense of threat. So threat activates the attachment system. When we feel threatened in some way, it's a natural instinct for us to want closeness to somebody that can protect us and help us out. And this is, of course, very helpful for our survival as a species and in general. The corollary of this is that when we don't feel threatened, when there is safety and we've been comforted or a threat has been removed, so for example, if someone is hungry as a baby and their mother has now fed them, or if a parent left a child alone with a stranger for a few minutes and it was scary for the child and now the parent has returned, so the threat has been removed, we would see in a healthy child who has a secure attachment style that they would be able to move on pretty easily from back to a sense of safety, and with a sense of safety into exploratory behavior. So maybe playing, learning, engaging with the environment, being active and engaged with things outside of the self or clinging to a caregiver who is there to protect the person. So again, threat turns on or activates the attachment instinct, which is to seek closeness with, to cling in a sense, or be close to someone that we associate with being able to protect us, a parent, a caregiver. And when the threat goes away, the natural way we're wired is to recover from the threat pretty easily, to allow ourselves to be comforted and to move on, and then to go back to engaging in behaviors that are seen when people feel safe. So, learning, engaging, playing, being alive and active to our environment. Of course, as there have been studies that have shown, for example, the strange situation, which was a study that Mary Ainsworth and her research team conducted about how children react when there's a separation from their mother for a short period of time and when the mother returns. And secure children show some distress when the mother leaves. So there's the threat activates some sort of attachment seeking behavior. They want the mother to comfort them, and they show that they're upset that she's gone. But they're able to kind of get regulated, and then when the mother returns, they easily go back to playing or feeling safe, and they're not showing that they're continuously activated with some sort of stress feeling in their bodies. They're able to move on and return to a sense of safety pretty naturally, and this is because they trust that their caregivers are there for them and responsive. And Mary Ainsworth was able to see a number of behaviors that parents engage in that help their children be secure. So one of those things is warmth, right? When a parent is warm towards their child and shows love and nurture, the child, feels safe and they feel that they'll be taken care of. Also very important for a child's autonomy to be respected. So parents that are very intrusive or that are very somewhat like controlling or forceful, that sort of like force their children to do what the parent wants the child to do. So maybe the child is not hungry, but the parent wants the child to eat. So the parent is a bit forceful about feeding the child, or the child is not tired, but the parent puts the baby to sleep because they want the child to go to sleep at that time on their schedule. So parents that don't respect their child's autonomy, right, that their child is a separate person with their own needs and feelings and rhythms, that doesn't usually create security. So it's very important to also respect your child's independence and treat them like their own person, that they have their own feelings, their own self, their own needs that are separate from yours. Also, very important to be able to separate your own emotions from your child's and to be regulated in your affect and your emotions. So, for a parent to be able to be somewhat emotionally in control and able to separate how they feel from their child's feelings. So, if a child falls down, and starts to cry and gets scared, if a parent starts to cry with the child, right, or gets alarmed with them, the child will get confused about whose feelings are these, right? Am I the one who's scared? Is my mother scared? Am I reacting to my feelings? Am I reacting to the fact that my mother seems alarmed right now? And the feelings of fear and distress will actually go up or escalate, right? If the parent has a fear response themselves. As well, if a parent is projecting their own feelings onto their child, so maybe the parent is feeling angry and treats the child like the child is angry or something like that. That's also very confusing to a child because child is very young and doesn't have words to explain how they feel. And if a parent is misreading them and sort of attributing motives or feelings to the child that are very different from what the child is signaling they're actually feeling, then that's also very disruptive to the child's attachment. And caregivers that create secure attachment are responsive, right? They they try to meet their child's needs, not all the time, not perfectly, especially as the child gets older. They can wait a little bit, they can handle some frustration, but enough of the time that the child feels they're effective, right? That if they have a need that needs to be met, that someone's going to respond without it becoming like a trauma because they have to wait so long or their distress is unbearable, right? That most of the time they feel responded to. This is also very healthy. Then there are insecure attachment styles where children either um, escalate their attachment seeking behavior, so they're very clingy. It's hard for them to calm down after a threat or after distress. They're not comforted easily. They want the parent there, but it's hard for them to use the parent to actually calm down and get regulated. And the distress is usually very hyped up. So there's a lot of intense distress in such children. And then people who have the opposite attachment style that's more avoidant tend to suppress their emotions, or at least the outward show of emotions. So they don't really show that they're very distressed or feeling needy or scared or threatened. They're engaging in more exploratory behaviors, distraction, playing, doing things in the outside world that take their attention away from their inner world and their feelings and emotions, especially vulnerable emotions or needy emotions. And they're basically downplaying their distress and suppressing it, not showing how distressed they are, but they're still feeling that stress in their bodies, such children, right? So the avoidant attachment doesn't really solve the problem. There still is a lot of stress. It's just the stress is not being shown, right? There's like almost like a mask of self-sufficiency, but the tension is still being felt inside of the person. So the reason I want to talk about this is that a lot of our attachment experiences translate into our adult relationships, but in ways that a lot of times are unconscious. Even though there's a lot of talk these days about attachment theory and people think it's very interesting and maybe listen to talks like the one I'm giving right now, um, we still have a lot of attachment experiences that we may not be aware of because they happened when we didn't have words, when we were very young, when we weren't able to think. And those experiences that happen pre-verbally or very early on in our lives before we have language tend to get encoded in ways where we re-experience those feelings or expectations that we've learned or been conditioned to have in relationships, but we don't always have conscious awareness of that happening until it plays itself out in new situations. So one of the things that happens, let's say in therapy, for example, is people might have reactions towards the therapist based on their past attachment experiences, but they may not be aware in the moment that they're reacting to something that's reminding them of something they learned in the past, like that they'll be rejected if they show neediness, for example, or that people won't be there for them consistently if they need help, or that when they tell someone else about their distress, the other person's going to get distressed and then they'll have to take care of the other person or something like that, right? So people have expectations, but a lot of times they're not aware of these expectations. They're very implicit. And that what ends up happening is we reinforce our previous experiences or our expectations because we're sort of like seeing our new experiences through those filters, right? So we have certain schemas and then we have trouble noticing when our experiences are different, right? And sometimes we even recreate almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? We recreate past experiences in relationships without even realizing we're doing it. So maybe we're used to being so self-sufficient or looking so self-sufficient that we present in a way that's very not needy or hides how much we're distressed or needing help, and then other people aren't there for us, or kind of withdraw because they're responding to our signals that we don't really want help or need help, or they don't even notice that we need help. And then it just reinforces this idea that we can't count on people, right, to help us. Nobody notices if we're in distress. Nobody cares. People just want us to be all together all the time or something like that, right? Or somebody with a more preoccupied attachment style who's more anxious, maybe they're expressing themselves in ways that are so anxious and with so much arousal that they create an anxiety response in other people, right? Because when you sit with someone who's very, very distressed, it's very easy for the person like seeing that or witnessing that to get very distressed also. So then maybe it sort of like triggers the other person, right, to feeling helpless or worried, and then they react emotionally, and the person feels like all of a sudden it's not about them, or their emotions are escalating in the interaction, right? And they're getting sort of lost in the other person's experience, or the caregiver doesn't seem strong for them or able to contain them. So a lot of times we either don't notice when things are different from our previous experiences, especially unconscious ones, or we're not aware of how we're recreating without wanting to experiences that feel familiar, even if they don't feel good, right? We don't know anything different. We want to feel a sense of predictability and control in our lives. And so things that are familiar, at least we know the rules for them, right? We know that if people are inconsistent or rejecting, okay, well then just take care of yourself, or don't express your emotions, or um, cling to people because they may not be there a minute later or something like that, right? We sort of engage in behaviors that fit our pre-existing schemas, and being able to change that is a little bit challenging until we become more conscious and more aware of ourselves. And one of the places where this can happen very naturally a lot of times is with one's own children, right? That a lot of times our children activate our own attachment experiences, what it felt like to us to be a child, our ideas about parenting, even if they're unconscious, right? Those things get played out and start coming up for us. So if you end up having like strong reactions either to authority figures or to your own children or people that are depending on you, it's good to look at those reactions and use them as a signal to maybe explore a little bit more what some of your beliefs are about people meeting your needs when you're distressed, right? And whether it's safe and smart, right, to show people that you need help or to be needy, and also to be able to be regulated enough to be independent and to think even when you're having strong emotions is also very important. So you want to kind of think about how you are in those two domains, right? Are you able to lean on people in appropriate, healthy ways? And by the same token, are you able to regulate yourself enough, right, that you're not overly dependent on other people to regulate you in ways that maybe like keep reinforcing this idea that you feel helpless, right? Or you can't manage your own emotions, which just makes you feel more out of control and more dependent, and doesn't usually lead to anything constructive happening in relationships when we're trying to use other people because we have trouble taking in the comfort and getting regulated. Another thing that's important is being able to talk about your experiences in a way that's accurate and truthful. So a lot of times people either get overly worked up and upset when they start thinking about their past experiences, or they end up like almost being in denial or trying not to think about the details too much and maybe intellectualizing some of their experiences. So learning how to talk about your experiences, even daily experiences that are happening right now, it doesn't even have to be about your past. Learning how to dig a little deeper inside yourself and try to like be able to think and feel at the same time, right? To be regulated enough and distant enough from your experience that you can think about it and you can reflect on it. And at the same time, to be able to feel your feelings, not to be disconnected, and to go a little bit into what you're feeling and into some of the details. Obviously, if you have trouble with this, you might need like a therapist or someone to help you with it. But if you're able to do it on your own or with a partner or someone like that, you can do that as well. And we want people to feel like they have like both a maternal function and a paternal function inside themselves, right? Like an inner mother that nurtures and protects and comforts, and also an inner father that encourages boundaries and play and exploring, right? Usually we associate maternal with the more attachment behavior, attachment oriented behaviors of calming and protecting and nurturing. And the father is often symbolized more by stimulating and playing and engaging, right, and teaching and things like that. Obviously, those are stereotypes and generalizations, but The idea is that you want to have an internal father and an internal mother that you could bring to your relationships and also to your emotions and your own experiences, where there's a part of you that can be validating and nurturing and accepting of yourself and give yourself the comfort that you need, and also a part of you that can help you move on and re-engage with the outside world and move away from your inner experiences when there's too much distress or you're ruminating on it too much or sticking with it too much. And when you have those feelings, internalize those two abilities and capacities to be like both a mother and a father figure to yourself in relation to your own emotions and experiences, then that often translates into helping your children be more secure. Okay, I hope that was helpful. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free.